Right, so we've finished shot blasting the whole boat. As you can see, it's all back to white steel. We can feel it, that it's a real good rough finish, which is exactly what we want. Now we're going to move over to actually the epoxy coating. We're using a Jotun product on this boat, so Jotun 90, which is a good epoxy system for inland waterways. So we'll go and mix some paint and then we'll start spraying. So that's part A and part B mixed together. You've got to be very careful to get all the last bits out of the tin because we've got to have that ratio right. And it's got to be well mixed. If you get any parts that's not mixed, then you'll have different parts of the paint coming through the actual spray machine with more hardener than paint or vice versa, and it just will not go off. Some paints also need an induction time, so sometimes you can have to wait 5-10 minutes maybe for it all to gel together. It is like a chemical reaction, so the two go together, which create the hardening process. So if you don't get it right with 2-pack paints, then it can be horrendous. But the most important is the health and safety side. All epoxies are quite dangerous. You don't want to be breathing in the fumes from epoxy paints. So again, we've got a suit, we've got gloves, we've got an air-fed mask. We've also quite fortunate that we've got the extraction system in this workshop. So we're fully extracted, and with the air-fed mask, we'll be fine. The machine we're using today is a 40-to-1 air-assisted airless Graco Mercure. We have to be very careful, so we've got to be very sure on the humidity and temperature. Epoxies and lots of 2-pack products do not like high humidity, so we've got a tester here to make sure. We are at about 60% today, which is fine. You wouldn't want to go much higher than that, sort of 70%, and you've got to start being a bit careful. You know, it's took 2 days to blast, and we're going to get the epoxy coatings on in the next 2 days, which is fine. It's all inside, like I say, we've got some heating in here as well, and the extraction, so all's looking good. So we've mixed our paint, got our air-fed mask, we're pretty much ready to go. This machine does have a hopper on it, which is very useful. If we're using big 20-litre tubs, then we'll take the hopper off, and then we have a suction hose that goes into the paint. But as it's a fairly small boat, so this system is fine. So we'll tip the paint into the hopper, and then it gravity feeds into the pump. Right, this is a very good tip for anybody who's spraying epoxies for the first time or the first few times. I will now put quite a lot of the paint that's in the hopper back into the tub, so I know everything in my lines, there's no thinners in my lines. I know that there's plenty of paint gone through there. I'm going to give it another stir after that, and then I'll put that paint back into the hopper. Some people may think it's a bit over the top, but you know, I'm just so nervous about paint not going off, so I'm a belt and braces kind of guy, and that's how I like to do it. Everything about spraying is about consistency, so we need to get the manufacturer to give us, say, 300 microns. We're going to try and get on this job. So if we've got inconsistency in a fan pattern, how are we going to get consistency of microns of paint? So you've got to try and get it set up correct, So every time you're spraying, you've got the same amount of paint going on the boat all over. We don't want 300 microns there, 250 there, 400 there. You know, we've got to try and keep it consistent. Right, so we've got our first coat of paint on. All looks quite good. No runs, no sags. We're going to have to leave this probably a good hour or so just to tack off before we put any more paint on. But how do we know how much paint we got on? You know, we could just keep going round and round all day, and we could exceed the maximum amount of paint that's supposed to be on there, or we could have not enough. So we need to know roughly what we've got on there. So I've got a wet film thickness gauge here, and there's different micron readings on there. So we've got 25, 50, 75, 100, 125, 150. So what I've got to do, I've got to press this gauge onto the wet paint, and then we put that onto a block, somewhat nice and flat, and we can see what paint we've got. So I'd say we're between 75 and 100 microns. So we know we've got about 75 to 100 microns on our first coat. So if I want to get 300, I'm going to have to put at least 3 coats of paint on.